Have you ever felt that haunting ache inside? The one that whispers, how can two people love each other so deeply, yet still be pulled apart? You wonder if they failed, if love simply wasn't enough. But according to Carl Jung and the deeper language of the soul, sometimes the separation of two loving souls is not a failure. It is a necessity, a profound, painful necessity guided by forces larger than the individual ego, forces rooted in the unconscious, in destiny, in the universe's quiet hand, shaping who we are meant to become. At first glance, it feels cruel. You meet someone who touches your soul in ways you never imagined, who awakens parts of you you didn't know existed. There's a recognition, a magnetic pull, a feeling of home, and then, often without warning, circumstances shift. Life intervenes, something changes, and you find yourselves standing on opposite sides of an invisible line, unable to cross back no matter how much love you feel. It leaves you questioning everything. Why would the universe bring us together only to pull us apart? Carl Jung believed that relationships are never random. Every encounter, especially those that pierce us deeply, carries meaning. These connections are often archetypal. They awaken ancient patterns within us, activating old wounds, hidden longings, and unconscious material that needs to rise to the surface. This is why the people we love the most are often the ones who trigger our deepest growth. And sometimes that growth can only happen through separation. Love, in its highest form, is not about possession or permanence. It is about transformation. We come into each other's lives not always to stay, but to catalyze change. The soul knows what it needs, even when the conscious mind resists. There are moments when two souls collide to awaken each other, to ignite a process of individuation, of becoming whole. And once that spark has done its work, the paths diverge, not because the love wasn't real, but because the next chapter requires solitude, self-discovery, or even the pain of loss to deepen the journey. It's tempting to think that if a relationship ends, it means it was a mistake. But Jung taught that the psyche operates on a symbolic level, not a literal one. The value of a connection is not measured solely by how long it lasts, but by what it awakens within you. Who did you become through knowing this person? What parts of yourself came alive? What shadows emerged? What dreams were born or died or transformed? These are the real fruits of love, not just the moments of joy, but the deep alchemical process of change it sets in motion. When the universe separates two souls who love each other, it often signals that the next phase of their individual journeys requires something the relationship can no longer provide. Perhaps one soul needs to explore their own identity outside the mirror of the other. Perhaps the connection, once a source of growth, has become a source of stagnation. Perhaps the pain of separation is itself the fire that will forge new strength, wisdom, or creativity. This is not punishment. It is evolution. The soul does not cling to comfort. It seeks truth, depth, expansion. But this understanding does not erase the grief. The heart, bound by time and attachment, longs to hold on. You remember the laughter, the intimacy, the dreams you shared. You replay moments over and over, wondering if you could have changed the outcome. This is where the ego clings, believing that if only it had done more, been more, fought harder, the loss could have been avoided. But Jung reminds us that the ego is not the master of fate. There are deeper currents shaping our lives, currents we cannot control or even fully understand. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is to release, to let go, not because we no longer care, but because we trust that the journey each soul must take is sacred, even when it leads us away from each other. This does not mean abandoning the memory or denying the impact. It means honoring what was while accepting what is. It means recognizing that the purpose of a connection is not always to stay, but to transform, and that the transformation often continues long after the relationship itself has ended. The universe operates in paradoxes. It brings people together to open their hearts, then separates them to strengthen their souls. It gives and it takes away. It teaches through both presence and absence. And in this dance, we are shaped, refined, matured. Jung believed that the path of individuation, the journey to becoming whole, is often marked by such paradoxes. We must learn to hold love and loss together, to find meaning not only in union, but in separation. You are not broken because you lost someone you love. You are not a failure because the relationship ended. You are a soul walking a path of profound transformation, a path that sometimes requires letting go, even when every part of you wants to hold on. This is the secret the universe whispers through the pain. You are still becoming. You are still growing. And every loss, every goodbye, every moment of heartbreak is part of the larger unfolding of who you are meant to be. The pain of separation is not just about losing a person. It's about losing the version of yourself that existed with them. When two souls intertwine, they co-create a shared world, a universe of habits, rituals, inside jokes, mutual dreams, and unspoken understandings. When that world collapses, you don't just grieve the person, you grieve the self you were in their presence. This is why separation cuts so deeply. It's not only about absence, it's about the void inside your own identity. Carl Jung understood that every relationship functions as a mirror. The people we love reflect back to us parts of ourselves we may not see or fully understand. Through the eyes of the beloved, we glimpse our own beauty, potential, and even our hidden wounds. This is why love feels so transformative. It reveals us to ourselves. But here lies the paradox. Sometimes, when a relationship has done its work, when it has awakened a necessary transformation, the souls must part so that each can integrate what they have learned on their own. It's not uncommon after a breakup or separation to feel disoriented, as if you've been ripped from a familiar map. You find yourself wandering in a landscape you no longer recognize, uncertain of who you are without the other person. But this uncertainty is not emptiness. It is the space of becoming. Jung called this the process of individuation, the journey of integrating all the parts of the self, both light and shadow, into a coherent whole. And often, this journey can only continue in solitude. When we are deeply connected to someone, we naturally shape ourselves around them. We adjust, compromise, and sometimes unconsciously suppress parts of who we are to maintain harmony or closeness. This is not inherently wrong. It is part of the dance of intimacy. But over time, if we are not careful, the relationship can become a container that limits growth. The universe, sensing this stagnation, may intervene, not to punish, but to liberate. Separation becomes the painful but necessary doorway to reclaiming lost parts of the self. This is why you may notice, after a significant loss, that you begin to rediscover aspects of yourself that had gone dormant. Old passions reawaken, new dreams emerge. You begin to see yourself not just as half of a pair, but as a whole, evolving individual. This does not diminish the love you shared. It honors it by allowing the growth it sparked to continue. Jung believed that the true purpose of relationship is not fusion, but individuation. Not to lose ourselves in another, but to meet them fully as whole beings. Of course, the longing remains. You may find yourself haunted by memories, by the ache of what could have been. You may wonder if the separation was truly necessary, if perhaps with enough effort or sacrifice, you could have held on. But here's the quiet truth. Sometimes love asks us to let go. Sometimes The most faithful act is not clinging, but releasing, trusting that the connection has served its purpose and that each soul must now walk its own path. Jung often spoke of the archetype of the wounded healer, the idea that through our own wounds we gain the capacity to heal, to deepen, to expand. The wound of lost love is one of the most profound. It cracks open the heart, exposing us to depths we might otherwise avoid. It humbles the ego, reminding us that we are not in control of everything, that life has its own rhythm and wisdom. And if we allow it, the pain becomes not just something to endure, but something to transform. This is not to romanticize suffering or suggest that all loss is meaningful in some cosmic sense. Rather, it is to recognize that the human psyche is endlessly creative in how it seeks integration and wholeness. Even in the midst of heartbreak, the unconscious is working, reshaping our inner landscape, preparing us for new chapters, new possibilities. The key is to stay present with the process, to resist the urge to numb, escape, or rush into distractions. In the silence that follows separation, there is an invitation to listen more deeply to your own heart, to notice the fears, hopes, and longings that rise to the surface. An invitation to explore who you are without the roles and expectations the relationship provided. This is the fertile ground of individuation. It is where you begin to harvest the lessons of love, not just as memories, but as living wisdom that shapes who you are becoming. You may find that over time, the pain softens, not because you forget, but because you integrate. The love does not disappear. It transforms. It becomes part of your foundation, part of the inner architecture of your soul. You carry it forward, not as a weight, but as a resource, a reminder of the beauty you are capable of, the depths you have touched, the resilience you have discovered. Carl Jung believed that life is not about avoiding pain, but about engaging fully with the journey of the soul. Every encounter, every loss, every joy and sorrow is part of this journey. And while the ego craves certainty, permanence, and control, the soul thrives in the dance of change, growth, and transformation. When the universe separates two souls that love each other, it is not an end, it is a turning point, a threshold, an opening into the next phase of your evolution. There comes a moment, often quietly and unexpectedly, when the sharp edge of heartbreak begins to soften, not because the pain has disappeared, but because you have learned to carry it differently. You begin to realize that the separation, as unbearable as it once seemed, has woven itself into the fabric of your being, not as a scar that marks you as broken, but as a thread that strengthens your depth, your wisdom, your humanity. Carl Jung taught that true transformation requires confrontation with the unconscious, with the hidden, often painful aspects of ourselves that we would rather avoid. And few experiences pull us into that confrontation as powerfully as the loss of a deep connection. In the wake of separation, we are left face to face with our own shadow, the parts of ourselves that depended on the other for validation, for identity, for a sense of worth. This is where the real work begins. You see, it's easy to believe that healing after loss is about moving on, about forgetting or replacing what was lost. But Jung would argue that real healing is not about forgetting. It's about integrating. It's about allowing the experience to reshape you from the inside out, to become part of your psychic landscape in a way that expands who you are, rather than contracts you in bitterness or regret. In the silence after love, you are offered the chance to meet yourself anew. Who are you without the reflection of the other? What dreams still live within you? What wounds ask for your attention? What patterns have repeated, and why? This is the space of individuation, the sacred and often lonely work of becoming whole. And it is here, in this space, that the universe's deeper purpose reveals itself. It may take months, even years, but eventually you begin to see that the separation was not just about loss, it was about preparation. Preparation for the next phase of your journey, for the next layer of your unfolding. The universe, in its quiet wisdom, knew that you needed this space to grow, to strengthen, to reclaim parts of yourself you had forgotten. The love you shared was not wasted. It was the catalyst. The separation was not the betrayal. It was the doorway. Jung believed that the soul's journey is rarely linear. We circle through cycles of connection and loss, union and separation, death and rebirth. Each time we spiral through, we emerge a little more conscious, a little more whole, but only if we are willing to engage with the process, to stay present with what is being asked of us. It's tempting to rush past the pain, to fill the void with distractions, to numb ourselves to the ache of absence. But every time we bypass the pain, we bypass the growth. What if instead you sat with it? What if you allowed the ache to speak, to reveal what it needs to reveal? Perhaps it is pointing you toward old wounds that need healing. Perhaps it is inviting you to explore new capacities within yourself: strength, creativity, independence. Perhaps it is simply teaching you how to hold a paradox, the ability to love someone deeply, even as you let them go. This is one of the most profound lessons the universe offers through separation. The realization that love does not always require proximity, possession, or permanence. Love, in its purest form, is spacious. It allows each soul the freedom to follow its own path, even when that path leads away. This is not easy. The ego resists, the heart aches, but the soul knows. It knows that true connection is never lost. It is transformed. You may find, as time goes on, that the love you shared continues to shape you in unexpected ways. You carry their voice in your memory, their influence in your choices, their presence in the quiet moments when you least expect it. This is not clinging. This is honoring. Honoring the gift they were, the chapter they represented, the awakening they sparked. And through this honoring, you free yourself to continue your own journey, not weighed down by grief, but enriched by it. Carl Jung reminded us that wholeness does not mean perfection or completion. It means embracing the totality of who we are, including our losses, our wounds, our unfinished stories. When the universe separates two souls who love each other, it is not closing a door, it is opening a new one that leads inward toward deeper self-awareness, deeper compassion, deeper connection to the larger dance of life. You are not meant to remain frozen in the past, nor are you meant to erase it. You are meant to carry forward what matters, to release what no longer serves, and to trust that the unfolding of your life is guided by a wisdom larger than you can see. This is the essence of the Jungian path: to surrender to the mystery, to walk with humility, to allow the unconscious to reveal its gifts, even when they come wrapped in loss. So if you are standing in the aftermath of separation, wondering why the universe has pulled you apart from a soul you love, know this: you are not being punished. You are being invited. Invited to grow, to deepen, to awaken. Invited to trust that the connection you shared has done its work, and that now it is time for you to step forward into the next chapter of your own becoming. Thank you for walking this path, for daring to face the hard truths, for allowing yourself to feel, to grieve, to heal. If this message resonates with you, consider subscribing for more reflections on Carl Jung, the soul's journey, and the hidden wisdom in our most painful experiences. Share your story in the comments. Your words may offer comfort to someone else who is walking this same path. And if you found value here, a like or a share helps this message reach others who need it. Remember, love is never wasted. Connection is never meaningless. And even in separation, the universe is guiding you, always, relentlessly, toward the fullness of who you are meant to become.